is a broader concept. It's a concept that is encompassing all organizations, associations, movements that exist outside the state and the market. And all of you know Civicus. I think they had quite an interesting definition, and they say civil society is the arena outside the family, the state and the market, where people associate to advance common interests. And the borders between the state, the market and civil society are not always clear-cut. Also not in Uganda, and we see this also in the discussions here, that there is a lot of, or that we are getting closer. And this is probably also one of the ideas of this convention. When we planned our program, we had a lot of discussions with civil society leaders. Some are present, a lot of them are not present, and that's why we need to discuss who should be present on such a convention. And the EU joined also in the discussions on what kind of support is needed by donors and what kind of support is rather counterproductive to organizations. And this was quite a rewarding experience, because we realized again and again how passionate people are about what they are doing. And I think this is really something that civil society and most civil society organizations can be proud of. As a result, we structured our support according to 3 areas. The first one is, and this is a bit alluding to the gentleman from the NGO Bureau who was speaking, it's the issue of conducive environment. The second is participation in policy dialogue, and the third one is capacity development. There is a saying that if you teach a person to fish, you feed the person for a lifetime. But you also must make sure that the lake isn't polluted, that the fishing rod can be repaired, and that the law rules also on the lake. Otherwise, teaching people to fish is no more effective than just giving them fish, which was the original part of the quote. Similarly, it's not enough to simply create and strengthen civil society organizations. You must make sure that they have an environment that they can operate in. This environment includes, and we had this before, regulations, includes tax laws. The colleague from the NGO Bureau said, no law stands alone. It's part of the legal system. And there's also laws that we discuss in civil society a lot about. It has been the money laundering laws, the police laws, the Public Finance Management Act, all these laws that play a big role. However, it must be very clear that both the laws, their application and their enforcement needs to be in line with the Constitution of Uganda, as well as international treaties that Uganda is party to. And this is also the premise around which we are working together with the NGO Bureau. And we have an advisor sitting there, and we are closely cooperating with them, and I think they are doing a good job. Civil society needs a conducive environment to thrive and to unfold its positive impact to the development of a country. Civil society is in fact essential. The freedom of association is not by accident a freedom right. And a freedom right means that regulation needs to limit itself to the absolute necessary in a democratic society. Civil societies reflect the diversity of democracies, and they often act as early warners, and you do as well, drawing attention to developments and problems at global level and within individual societies, as well as instigating new approaches. I have been embedded in the National Planning Authority in a previous job. And I realized that the NPA Act, for example, states that NPA together with civil society should oversee the government. Not a lot of people know that. And I don't want to go into detail with this, but I would like to point out that there are members of government institutions that are realizing the importance of civil society in governmental planning and implementation, both at national and local levels. Hence, there is some space that is not fully used, but that need to be used, because planning and implementation becomes better when civil society gets involved, and this we know from many countries in the world. We are now cooperating with the National Planning Authority to setting up the National Development Plan 3, the whole process, and there we are trying to convince, and I think some we have convinced already, that civil society has something to say. Not all of them, but some. And some are even associating in umbrella organizations to make a coalition and to bundle their views. In addition, we realized also that participation is not only a centralized process, but it's relevant for each and every local government structure in Uganda. With the generous support of the EU, we have established an office in Gulu and in Mbale. In order to support CSOs decentralized, we are only to a limited extent looking at the champions in Kampala, but try to find the hidden gems up country. In Uganda, we are seeing diverse forms of civil society participation. Some could be called very close coalitions, others are of a more confrontational relationship, others are pragmatically led by the search for a win-win situation, some are formalized, others not, and many more. Focused participation needs some form of ability, and there we are in the capacity development part. Ability to develop competences to analyze the sector, the area of interest, and to develop good solutions. It needs ability to analyze, and there I was hoping also for the input from the university professor. Ability to analyze governmental policies and constructively contribute to their development. Ability includes knowledge about political processes. Where in the policy dialogue do you place the interests of your members, interests of your clients, interests of your membership organizations? Ability is linked to stronger networks, to bundle competence and join resources to be heard. That's why I'm also missing some of the networks here. Hence it includes the ability to associate in networks, but could also require at times to create coalitions with state actors. But ability to participate in policy processes needs credibility. Standards for state actors or the private sector need to apply strictly to their own performance. Accountability, transparency, human rights-based approaches. And in addition, if the organization that you established or that you are heading collapses when you leave, one could argue that your internal governance structures were not strategically set up. We realize not only in Uganda that this is an issue for many organizations and in all sectors. This is also why when we ask for support, we refuse to finance just an activity. We refuse to finance permanent structures. Our first question should, and in my program I hope, I'm not following every process, but I hope that the first question is always, what do you want to achieve? What is your profile of your organization? What role are you playing, or do you want to play within which context? Arthur LaRocque phrased it to the point, how can civil society liberate itself out of the incentivization trap? meaning out of the trap that the money defines the content. I know it's much more complex than that, and the discussion here is also very much about how can we diversify funding, how can we survive, how can we, as some colleagues put it, how can we escape the shrinking financial space. But there is I think, a constant obligation to ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing? And there is an obligation for self-reflection that applies to all civil society organizations, no matter in what field they are active, but certainly also to all donors. To conclude, civil society is much more than opposition. Civil society are all organizations and movements that are non-state and non-for-profit. Participation in policy formulation should be welcomed by the state, because civil society comprises an immense amount of knowledge and passion to further the development of Uganda. Participation is possible, but needs ability in order to perform at eyesight. Self-reflection is a healthy tool for all actors in all sectors, the state, the private sector, and civil society. The same applies for donors. Thank you very much.
Give him another round of applause. And allow me once again to welcome those who have joined us on NTV Uganda and 93.3 KFM who are following us live. We're here on the first NGO Executive Directors Convention at Hotel Africana with the theme, Opening New Frontiers for Partnership and Resources. And many people from early in the morning, different speakers, have been trying to discuss on the issue of efficiency, networking, alternative sources of funding, and how they can leverage on technology. And so this is the first of its kind, and we hope it's going to build a foundation so that in the coming years we'll be having different conventions take place where we bring together the executive directors of NGOs around Uganda. So thank you for joining us, for those who have joined us on NTV and KFM, and those who are streaming live. Now, we are going to the next item, which will be, we shall have the Executive Director, Kalamba Community Development Organization, Mr. Frederick Bombo, who will be taking us to the issue of harnessing collaborations and networking for NGO sector. I beg your pardon, the challenges and practical lessons of operating an NGO in a competitive and donor-focused environment. Ladies and gentlemen, bring your hands together as welcome Mr. Frederick Bombo to speak to us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is usually very difficult this time after a very big meal, but I pray that we listen. My name is Frederick Bombo, and I'm the Executive Director, Kalamba Community Development Organization. This organization is based in Mutambala District, Central Uganda. That is after Mpigi, but before Gomba. I've been working in the NGO work for the last 20 years, and it has not been very easy. But I just want to have a short presentation, which is basically going to trickle our discussion as we go along. I've been the chairperson PG on the different forums. I was also once a board member of the National NGO Forum, I'm currently an advocacy representative on human rights in 4 districts, that is Mpigi, Butambala, Gomba, and Sembabule. And we have a representation of very, very, very many organizations. That is me now. You can go to the next slide. Just as we have been discussing ever since this convention started, we have been seeing a number of challenges coming up. Organizations, some of us where we started, it was not very easy. We entered into something that we are not very professional about, although we had the passion, because we are seeing gaps in our communities. But it was not very easy to go through that. This is like running a business enterprise without the skills that are required. You are always making losses. So we have a number of organizations there in the community that are still practicing that. Therefore, we need to have the skills of selling our products, just as many of you have been saying that now we have to shift from the NGO voluntarism to business-like work. You can see many organizations are working without documents. They are working without policies. Although these policies are so many on the shelves of many institutions, but at times, just as our NGO board chief said, that reading, disseminating, and understanding these policies is a different thing. I want to concentrate my presentation on the small organizations. That is the CBOs. The next, I want to concentrate my focus on those NGOs or CBOs that are operating at a rural-based level, at a district level, sub-county, parish. These organizations have done a lot of work, and ever since we started this convention, we have touched there little. We have been so much on the corporate level, but most of our work is down there. Even when we go to the communities, or when we go to do our research, we start with these organizations. They have valuable information, which we usually use for our research and for starting our projects. Although it's not documented, although it's not well prepared, but it is valuable information, which we usually utilize to do our projects down there. You find most of the big organizations that are based this side. And usually they go to the communities at different intervals. They don't take so long in the communities. So the people, they really find it very confident to deal with the organizations that they feel are closer to them. So we still have that challenge that our organizations, they are started by people who are passionate about things. They start in their houses, no office, no what. You find someone doesn't know even how to draft a constitution. He comes to you, now I want to register my CBO. Okay, now when you go to the district, they are going to need this, they are going to need this, they are going to need this, they are going to need this. But he has never even heard of a constitution. They are operating their meetings in the local language, no English. They have never even seen a policy. For example, I want to give an example of organizations working with HIV/AIDS. The policies are there. Some of them have got the policies on HIV/AIDS, but interpreting them, these policies are not fully disseminated because they are there, they have them on the shelves, but they are not read, they are not understood by those people. So you find people working on a certain intervention, but with a lot of gaps. And this affects a lot of the quality of the services that they are going to deliver. Next slide. We have challenges as organizations down there in the community. We cannot compete with the funding with the organizations like you. If EU was to post a call, we can't even think about it. because they are going to ask for a 3-year audited reports. Where are you going to get them? Even the money you are using to audit just one report is not there. The records are being kept, but they are not well documented to know that exactly this year I got this much and this is how I spent it. So you find that we have a number of gaps. With technology, most of the people, I think you saw the first phone which was posted there by the IT company. Those phones phased out, yes, but there are even other phones that are within still the same range. People cannot afford the smartphones down there because, first of all, they are very power consuming, and of course there is no power. So if someone was to have a phone on, it's going to be like 45 minutes and it's off. So most of the time you communicate. One time I was with one of the colleagues, and I had posted the bulk SMS, calling them for a meeting which was very important. So I even included my phone. So when the guy sent the message, incidentally we were together and I received the message on my phone, which I had instructed to deliver. So the same person I was with, he also got the same message. But when he looked at it, he saw SMS, he deleted immediately. These SMSs, usually they come with nothing. Then I told him that you have just deleted a very important message. Look at this. This is the information you are getting because I'm also getting it. And I was inviting you. So if I was not with you, you are going to miss this very, very important this is very important meeting. So we have such people that even when you send SMSs, they may not be able to open them, or they may not be able to read them, or that kind of stuff. They have no computers, at times no network. You call someone, you take a full week without getting in touch with that person because of the network or because of the power or because of the work. But they are there in the community, they are doing the work. I want to cite one example. There is a lady in Mpigi. She has an organization, it's called Subiri Abato. That lady, every time there is an incident with a child abuse case, she uses her resources from her pocket. Whether she has ended the case or whether she has, but always she's there to protect the kids. But this lady has no funding. She's doing her work in the house. I don't know what to call such people. But they are there, they are committed to the work in the community. You find someone is being approached by very many women who are HIV positive, telling her their secrets, which cannot even tell to the health workers where she has to get the services. But this lady is in the community. She's offering those powerful services to the community. You'll give me the name to give to those people. Because they are there, we have them. And we have been working with them for quite some time. We are still having a challenge of setting up partnerships. We are still working in competition. You find 3 organizations working in the same village. They are doing the same intervention, but they are not coordinating. There is a lot of double work. This one is also giving books, the other one also is giving school fees, this one is also giving. There is no order. We have such challenges that are happening, and a lot of resources are wasted in that. And usually, some of them, they're having the resources from their pockets, but they want to keep at that level. We have people are not able to develop fundable proposals because they don't have that capacity. And just as I said in the beginning, that if EU or if NGO Forum or if was to call for funding, nobody will push in the application because the requirements are not there. Some have not got the certificates yet. Some have not renewed. Some last worked about 3 years ago, but they are still on the ground there, slowly. But they are there. So how can we actually bring out those? Because they are doing a lot of work down there on the ground. And they are very useful to us, the big organizations that are up here. Because when we go there, they are the ones we start with to get the real geography of the area and also the information that we need. Next slide. Another
NTV brought you the first economic summit in 2016 and the second in 2017, geared at finding ways to kickstart Uganda's economy and have growth with jobs.
How do we stimulate demand? You can stimulate demand in two ways.
At the NTV Economic Summit, we do not lament or just cry about our problems.
The Ugandans are not participating. Those who try, they ask you, how much experience do you have?
My answer to you is, register the farmers, change the policy.
We seek and discuss solutions.
What kind of project are you going to develop in 5 years and be able to make money?
Really, we should use the capital markets to mobilize long-term financing to complement government efforts of financing infrastructure.
The theme for the third NTV Economic Summit is key policy triggers for economic growth with jobs.
Creating jobs. Who can do it? You know, that's my passion. The task I have is to industrialize this country.
The summit will be held on the 28th November 2018 at the Kampala Serena Conference Center. Join us as we seek for real solutions for the real challenges to foster real growth with jobs for Uganda. The summit is brought to you by NTV, Turning on Your World, and supported by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development.
Politics bamujje mu security eggwanga lyaffe ligenda kukola ki kufuna obuzibu nze omuntu wa wansi atuula wansi ku ttaka ssebo nze ngenda okuweerera omwana oyo ng'onzimbidde essomero lya kalina
naye ne gavumenti oba eri munkwe etubuzaabuza tekutula eri awo tulaga eno tulaga eno esayidi katale esayidi katale akati abantu ate koona abantu basalinga badde eno nga badde eno emmotoka zibakoone awantu otwaga gavumenti etekawo sente wetulaba ambulensi zetuzibira omuntu n'awulira akagombe ka ambulensi ng'ereeta mulwadde n'alemera mu kkubo.
Capacity build, maybe the funding is going through you, and then we have some work on the ground done. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Give another round of applause to Mr. Frederick Bombo. And I think the organizers of this convention did something important to include community-based organizations, so that those who are at the district level in Butambala, in Kyenjojo, in Katakwi and Amuria can also, their voice can be heard. I have seen somebody from Kind Uganda who is here. So we have quite a number of people the big, the medium, and the small ones. So it's important your voice has come out. And they're also going to be on the podium as panelists to discuss important issues. And let me give some kind of rules of engagement when they come. The panelists take their seats. Like I said, we are going to speak one at a time. There was in the last session, somebody would put up their hand and you tell them, you give them an opportunity to speak, but then they are going to ask 4 or 5 questions. Now, in the interest of time, may I suggest that you look for that big question or that big contribution that you have so that you make one point. And should you disagree with whoever is making a presentation, yes, it is always good to disagree, but disagree with respect, because that creates a difference. And of course, we're not all of us going to agree in most cases. So you'll tell us where you're from. I'll give you a chance to talk to us, but also be precise and be concise. So let us invite with a round of applause Miss Emily Katarikawe to come. I know this after lunch and the clapping is not very heavy, but could you do that again? Thank you very much. Please, the steps are right there on your left. Take to the podium. May I also invite Mr. Jackson Bitarabeho to join Emily right here in front. Jackson, please. And also, may I invite Frederick Bombo to return in front here. Okay, from since morning we've been talking about the efficiency, not networking and resource mobilization and looking for other alternative sources, accountability, integrity, and things like this. And sometimes I think they misunderstand NGOs. Sometimes they think maybe you are opposition or whatever. But me, I look at you as strategic partners of government because you are really complement or subsidize what they are doing in the rest of the country. Okay, please, Mr. Frederick Bombo. This is what is going to happen. Let me give Mr. Jackson Bitarabeho the microphone first because we have not heard his voice. And after that, you will be asking them questions or contributing to whatever earlier statements they will have made. So, Mr. Jackson Bitarabeho, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Jackson Bitarabeho, Executive Director, Children AIDS Fund. We are in the business of HIV management, but we encompass the whole aspect of the family. Our entry point in the beginning was through the child, as you remember, when we had the UESO and had orphans and adults were dying. Some children were being left behind as orphans and borrowed children. But as we speak right now, no one should be dying from HIV/AIDS, as there is treatment, there is care and support, and there are other programs that are taking place. So, in terms of what we are discussing this afternoon, which is partnerships, and Sabomba has talked about that this afternoon. It's very important that we take on this together. In this context, Children AIDS Fund is working with the district structures, working with CBOs, working with other NGOs funded by international NGOs and through other governments like US governments through PEPFAR. We are currently have 8,600 beneficiaries, in fact not beneficiaries, 8,600 OVCs with their families. So in total we have about 25,000 beneficiaries of our OVC programs. At the same time, we are giving care and treatment to about 8,000 patients directly and their families through other support mechanisms. In terms of funding and the challenges that we are facing, there are very many. The funding space is becoming very limited in terms of funders that have ready money to fund not only HIV but other programs. The main funder, as you know, has always been the European Union, but United States by far has been the largest funding organization or institution, United States government. But for those who have been following the latest politics, there may be a few challenges coming our way. And in this context, we still have challenges in terms of social developmental issues, and we cannot run away. This morning we had the presentation from Madme, and that was a very encouraging development, organic growth through diversity. And I think we need to take a leaf from that. In terms of what Mr. Bob has brought up this afternoon, we cannot do it alone. We have to have those partnerships. It's a must, we have to have them. Not only are they very important, but everything happens at that level. Because we are talking about, as someone says, civil society, or talking about communities, talking about individuals. That's where the individuals are. Right to say there are some individuals in cities and towns, but the majority of our population is in the villages. And the majority of our problems or the issues that we're tackling with are in the villages. I would like to maybe comment a little bit about the technology that was introduced to us this afternoon. But the most important part that really appealed to me was the, I don't know whether I could call it the lack of what, but information flow is still a very big challenge as far as the country is concerned. I knew Agri-Tex. I knew about Agri-Tex today. And I have been seeing rock. I didn't know what rock was. It was a misspelled rock. I thought it was rocks. I didn't know what it was all about. Then I have got a small little proposal that has reached at the stage of funding. In fact, we have received some funding of about $20,000, which we need to develop like a trial project to see whether it can work. Yet, we have got rock which is here that would have actually taken it on in one breath, and we didn't know about it. This one is coming from very far, trying to look for. So I think I need to commend National Media Group for what you have done for us. Thank you very much. Because, and I need to emphasize this, in the past we meet through organizations like, for us, our forum is UNASO, Uganda National AIDS Support Organization, UNASO, those organizations which are in HIV/AIDS. But in most times when we meet and we are passionate, it is about looking for resources. Global Fund is here, is coming, and they have given some money to civil support organizations. And we are not in the mood to discuss issues like we are discussing this afternoon. We form consortia and partnerships when we are looking for funding. And indeed, within a very short time after funding is received, there is a lot of divorces in those consortia, because the goals that took us there were diverse goals. Some people were looking for capacity development, others looking for funding, others looking. As soon as those are not answered, those divorces happen very, very quickly. So a forum like this is where we need to look at our suitors and then see that that may be the person whom I can join with next time. And thank you very much, NMJ. I repeat that once again. And I hope this continues. Lastly but not the least, I'm glad that we have got GTZ this afternoon. GIZ, sorry, this afternoon. You are representing a group that is slowly disappearing from our midst. A few years ago, there would be a lot of Muzungus in this forum. But now you can see they are not there almost. You are there. Thank you very much. What I'm trying to emphasize is that the issues that you see here are still here. As are issues still in even developed countries. Those issues are always there where human beings are. So please keep on carrying the message that the civil society is there, ready to shake hands or join together so that we can also join the group of other countries that have overcome adversities. With those few maybe opening remarks, I would give the microphone to my friend who hasn't also spoken.
Yes, Emily.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you to Nation Media Group for this unprecedented conference, and we are privileged to be here. I want to build on what I said earlier. First, that I represent JAPAIGO. JAPAIGO is a Johns Hopkins University affiliate. We have a presence in 154 countries and 41 country offices. Uganda is one of the young ones, but Johns Hopkins was here much earlier, setting up the School of Public Health and Regional Center of Quality of Health Care. So having an office that is young does not mean that we have not supported Uganda. This morning, someone sent me a clip on WhatsApp, and I'm sure some of you have seen it. It was a woman with 3 children. They were loitering around a cafe, and this lady kept herself busy on phone, but her children had been trained to steal handbags. I'm sure you saw it. The young boy of about 4 years tried, but he almost made a mistake. But the girl of 9 years seemed to have mastered the art. And indeed, they walked away with a handbag of some white lady. What are we training the world? Uganda. And I want to build on what was presented this morning on corporate governance. It's something that us in the NGO world don't seem to put a lot of attention to. And I was asked to share my experience around corporate governance, but especially dwell on the issue of transparency, integrity, and accountability. When you walk to any organization, those 3 words will be somewhere on the board as their values. But is it true? Is it true that these are actually your values? What has affected a lot of our successful organizations is not doing what they say they are doing. And so when we talk about those elements as elements of corporate governance, it starts with an individual. When you're talking about transparency at individual level, what does it mean? It means that the actions you do are true to yourself, what you profess to hold as your values. It means that primarily you are accountable to yourself and are comfortable that what you say is equally true and consistent with what you do. And so, as we create board of directors, as we create senior management, if we have people who don't have who are not true to themselves, you definitely don't expect to have a truthful board and a culture that upholds those corporate governance issues. And so I thought, in my experience, I should share what I've learned about those values. First of all, with yourself as a leader of an organization or a company, be sure that you are transparent. It means you are going to tell your team what is going on. You are going to state clearly and share with them the mission, the vision of the organization, and what you are setting out to achieve. You're going to acknowledge as an individual that there are certain things you don't know and that you need help from your team. You are going to give credibility where it is due, and don't claim to have done things yourself when you know there are heroes behind that you refuse to acknowledge. In leadership, we say, you discipline in private, but recognize publicly. And that's a bit of a value and transparency a leader must put in place. That everybody knows where the hurdles are, where you have failed, and where you as an individual cannot do certain things, and you know, and you will say that you are relying on staff number so-and-so or staff so-and-so to help you out of the problem. That you are not a jack of all trades. There are some capacities in yourself that are not strong. That's transparency, that's integrity that of you. Secondly, transparency and integrity at organization level. What are you telling your donor? What are you telling your partnerships? And I'm sorry, even if we talk about partnership here, if you are going to start partnerships and start with a lie, soon they will find out, and soon they will lose respect in you. They will lose trust in you. So overclaiming among organizations is a big problem. This morning, Mr. Kamara said what he heard from the CEO in his office was very different from what he found in the field. I'm sure if he was a donor or someone seeking partnership, he would walk away. And indeed, many people walk away from us because we are not as truthful as we should be. So even in our reports, it's not always success stories. In development work, we have a term we call fail fair. Write your report and put a fail fair story. Acknowledge that you are failing. You had this strategy, you thought it would work, but your assumptions were too much and you failed, but you've drawn lessons from it. That's transparency, that is integrity. When we talk about these two, we tend to think about in terms of integrity, we think in terms of financial expenditure and accountability. No. We also have a role to be accountable to our beneficiaries. So yourself, your stakeholders, and your beneficiaries. There are very many challenges in Uganda. We take medicines, we are taking them to Bundibujo, but they end up in somebody's shop. And so one would ask, if Organization Z is saying they are delivering medicines to the last mile, they have done workshops in this rural area, if the donor was to find out, would that be true? Would the beneficiaries say what you say? Because the moment the beneficiaries or your customers' perception of you is different from how you want them to perceive you, the issue of mutual trust falls through. Lastly, I want to say also that in dealing with partnerships, like ROC or others, let's agree to say we can't manage that. Let's also agree to say we've never managed that kind of money, and so sorry you want to support us, but that money is too big for us as an organization to handle. Let us also say that if we could learn from you, we'd probably do a better job. I have an experience where I gave money to an organization to do some work with commercial sex workers. When the report came, they had reached so many commercial sex workers that the number was more than the population of that sub-county. So which means even the 6-month-olds were among the sex workers. Some of these simple things let us down. And so let's sustain the values that are on the walls of our offices.
Thank you very much, Emily. A round of applause for her. So now I think we have reached that moment when we get to hear from you and then bring ideas that you have on how we can collaborate and how we can network, on how you can build integrity and systems that can last. During the lunch break, I had a conversation with Mr. Cuthbert Baguma, and he came up with, he has an idea of something like a business enterprise development to come along on an NGO so that you have it on the side, so that maybe it can be a business continuity plan. But let me give him an opportunity to expound on that because it intrigued me during a lunch break. Catherine, again, please could you take a microphone to Mr. Baguma, and then yes, Madam will come to you.
Where is Mr. Baguma?
It's right there. And then, please be precise and concise. And I've realized that people in the NGO world also speak like politicians. Maybe that's why they call you opposition, because when you get a microphone, you really talk for long.
No.
So I've passed the message in a way.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and all the panelists and all of you colleagues. I'm called Cuthbert Baguma, and I'm a trainer in the area of fundraising and resource mobilization. I'm a retired civil servant and now an active consultant. During my training, in the training I've conducted in the area of fundraising and resource mobilization, the whole question of sustainability keeps on emerging. And out of that, the need for innovation is inevitable. Even from our own lives, we are always comfortable when the type of continuous dependent comes with an idea that this time around support me to move to the next level rather than for the next meal. And so our vision should also incorporate a dimension of sustainability based on enterprise. That enterprise can also be structured along the type of service that you deliver. The example of Mild May, actually for me, was a telltale story about how something which is a social cause can also assume an economic or social dimension. So to speak, we're talking about the concept of social enterprise as an element of sustainability. Part of it also is in the area of creating, also looking elsewhere, particularly into the private sector. The motives of the private sector definitely are profit-driven and have an ingredient of corporate social responsibility. But along that, there is a possibility of reconciling their objectives with yours, and then you develop a business angle towards the activities. That's what I wanted to comment about briefly, Mr. Kamara, since you restricted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baguma there. So, well, yes, Madam. And then we'll have another person here. Your name and where you're from, and please keep it precise and concise.
Thank you. I'm Elizabeth Ongom. I work with the European Union in Kampala, and I happen to be the responsible task manager for civil society. So sitting in here since morning and listening to the presentations before has also been a learning point for us in the European Union. And I must applaud NMG for pulling this convention together. I must say, well done. It was a good first step, and it's good that you were courageous enough to take this move. From the EU being, I will not assume everybody knows what the European Union is, but my assumption is at least 10 people in this room would know what the European Union is: a funding agency, predominantly, but also a political entity, with a significant portfolio in civil society, both locally and globally. I must first of all say that one of the things that has particularly touched me is a presentation by Mr. Bombo. He has mentioned issues that we also in the EU have been grappling with, and that we are fully aware about these issues. But maybe I'll just mention 2 points for purposes of time. The first thing is my experience sitting in that office is about the non-responsiveness of especially national organizations. When I say non-responsiveness, it is in many ways in terms of responding to calls for proposals. Of course, the argument is always, all the templates are very difficult, it's very difficult, it takes a lot of time. But our experience is actually pointing that a few courageous ones are soldering on, and we are beginning to see more and more Ugandan birthed organizations benefiting from EU financing directly without European partners and without additional assistance. One thing that civil society organizations probably in Uganda need to do is commit a bit more time to read, R-E-A-D, read the document. It might seem like a tall order, but that is it. Many times, many partners are quite reluctant. They look at the document and say, no, it's too long, it's too difficult, we will not manage that. But those who have managed have at least got beyond stage 1 and stage 2, and in many cases have been eliminated because of budget restrictions on our side. But we are seeing a higher quality on the part of Ugandan organizations. And another issue that I must say also, I will not repeat what was mentioned by PKF about the reputational risk. I think that is real. It is important that organizations guard their reputations very jealously and seek to maintain it as such, because as my colleague Mike also mentioned, development partners, we speak to each other in detail and we share information in detail. I will not go any further than that. And finally, probably, Mr. Chair, is that the discussion on alternative sources of financing, I think, is long overdue, because aid, even at a global level, has shrunk. This kind of funding decisions are made by politicians. If you look at globalization and the global politics as it stands now, aid to certain sectors, to certain geographical regions is diminishing. And this is not only to Uganda, it's a global trend. And I must also say that international NGOs are facing the same challenges that national ones are facing. So seeking and beginning this conversation is really pertinent at this time.
Okay.
I thank you.
Thank you very much. She has said that you read. You know, somebody said that if you want to hide something from an African, you put it in a book. But now he's telling you there's something in that book. Please read, don't miss out on something. Yes, there's a gentleman right there in African creative attire.
Thank you very much, Kamara and our panelists. My name is Kakuru Robert. I'm the Executive Director, KIK Corruption out of Uganda. You can call me KIK. We are based in southwestern Uganda, Kabale based. Mr. Bombo shared quite a number of good ideas. We are one of the let's say, village-based organizations, and who have attempted to try and partner, collaborate with other network organizations, but also donors. But the experience says, when our friend from EU was sharing, I was like, how has she discovered my thinking? A call is made. We have experienced, like maybe many of you, you respond after answering a very big tool and sleepless nights. Then they give you feedback that you have exceeded your application with 1 page. So thank you for trying next time. Even if you had a good idea, but the page makes you go out. Then you imagine an organization like Kabale. You are even writing English in Ruchiga, and but you also want to come on board and meet EU or meet GIZ or something, and make sure you also provide service delivery. So the point I'm saying, there are quite organizations that are doing tremendous work. But because of accessibility and maybe being technical, the issue of capacity that Madam has been talking about has totally made many players out of this sector. And because of that, many beneficiaries have lost. So, Kamara, in that regard, even reaching here from Kabale, you can see I look at MOP of that area. It's really, I was sending a picture.
I'm only intrigued by the name of the organization, and I'm wondering your sustainability, because keep corruption out of Uganda.
We have to keep it.
So, in other words, if you want to remain in business, there should be corruption.
And no, we are saying
that's the whole point.
We have to kick it.
So if you
somewhere so maybe some other idea is like, I also join the rest of the voices that have appreciated one who organized this important meeting, and say we have a very, very big challenge, especially when it comes to galvanizing together as civil society, the way GIZ colleague put it. There is, you see, an issue around organizations that deal with governance work and service delivery work. Some, we intend not to be doing the same work. For example, they call those who distribute, let me use that, because those who directly distribute condoms, I'm sorry if you don't believe in them, but we have two. And KIC, which is monitoring whether condoms have reached the user. We seem not to be coordinating properly. We seem to be different players, and therefore those who are, let's say, those who are the government also, when you are talking to them, especially if it comes to local governments, they tend not to understand what we do, and they say, who are you and who are what? Therefore this meeting, I think Mr. Kamara, should be a meeting to connect, to understand that all of us here are players. There is no service delivery and governance organizations, and we have to work and complement service.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kakuru. Thank you very much. Okay, now the previous speakers, all of them have taken a lot of time, and we need many people to have a chance to speak. In case I don't reach you, it doesn't mean that I don't want you to speak. It will be a question of time. So now I think you need to go at the back, so that
there's a microphone at the back there.
Okay, please.
At the back, please. Thank you.
The last person at the back.
Oh.
Okay, he's changed it.
He changed his mind.
Okay.
Thank you. Emmanuel Juko from Deaf Development Foundation. I speak for our audience, the deaf, as persons with disabilities. The presenter on behalf of
people with a hearing impairment, to be correct in some ways.
All right.
Okay.
Someone from GIZ said that they are supporting government, National Planning Authority in producing a national strategic plan. The current strategic plans are a bit silent on persons with disabilities. So it is my prayer here that you also focus on that area. That is just one thing I wanted to comment about.
Thank you very much. This row, Catherine.
I don't see the hand. Where is it?
At the back.
Okay.
Where are your specs today?
I brought them.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm Ndungo Nelson Sande, Executive Director, Wenzori Peace Bridge of Reconciliation. And we are based in Kasese. We also have activities in Ibundibujo. I also want to add a voice to the contribution by Dombo and also the money from Chigezi. For us, organizations working at grassroots, we find ourselves completely isolated, especially when it comes to the amounts of money to be applied for. For us, we may not need as much money as these people at the center may need. But you find yourself, you may be qualifying, but you find that the amount of money that needs to be applied for is about 100 million. And for you don't need as much as that. You may need even 50 in 3 years. So you find yourself left out. Yet our services at the grassroots, especially some of us who are in advocacy, awareness, and handling some other issues at the grassroots, you find yourself more attached to the community than even other organizations which need a lot of money. So my request also is that there is need to empower these people at the grassroots. Their services are very, very important to the community.
Okay. Thank you very much. The good thing we have GIZ here, we have European Union, we have JPAGO, I think we have DGF. So all the decision makers are in this auditorium and they are listening.
Thank you very much. My name is Christine Nantongo. I'm a program advisor and stakeholder facilitator in the oil and gas sector, working with Maendeleo ya Jamii. On our part, speaking for my organization, but I think also as relevant to all other NGOs, I think we need to talk about resources beyond funding. Because what we have seen that has greater mileage is having funding only as a subsidiary of the whole discussion of driving development. And in this discussion, we have a bit of deficiency on looking at what resource do we bring. And my substantive submission is actually the need for us, especially NGOs and government, to own up in terms of the value that each of us brings into a partnership. Because I know, for instance, that NGOs or consortiums like the Uganda Water and Sanitation Network, Environmental NGO Network, they report to government every year and government publishes a report. In 1 year, I recall that the water NGOs have ever contributed 3.2 billion to the sector. And that is not little. It would be good in an arrangement like this for us to look at what are the facilitants for partnership that we can build on, rather than dwell too much on the incidentals of negative. The negative things are good, but usually things that give you drive tend to be the things that are positive because they give you energy.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Algrecia Akwi Ogojo again. I am the Executive Director of Uganda Land Alliance, which is a consortium of 60 organizations and individuals who have an interest in securing land rights of Ugandans, especially the poor and vulnerable Ugandans. We are a membership organization, and our members are based in the countryside, as you said, rural areas. They are based at the sub-county, and they're also based at the district level. part of our program is capacity building of our members. And that is because we realize that to protect, to help people secure their land rights, needs somebody close to them. So we have had strategies of training paralegals on what the land law and the national land policy entails. And for those people to know the procedures and processes of securing their land, either in terms of titling or at the moment for the customary tenure areas, applying for customary certificates of occupancy, as well as applying for community land associations, registering them. And we pioneered this in Karamoja, and as I speak today, the Ministry of Lands has taken up that program and has continued with it in a couple of districts, including Kasese. So I'm making this contribution because I was hearing a lot of negativity that nothing is happening. There are national organizations, of which Uganda Land Alliance is one, that works closely with the land actors at the community levels as well as the district levels. And I know also that there are women's organizations, national ones, that do the same thing. So it's a question of just taking opportunity of such forums as these ones to share this kind of information. Just last week, we held the National Land Forum for Uganda, and we had land actors from all over the country. And now what we have started doing as Uganda Land Alliance is to come up to have memorandums of understanding with our partners at the district levels. We have one right now with the Teso region. We are going to sign one with the Lango region. Sub-regions, organizations working there that are partly our members or are hoping to become our members, because we have a criteria for admitting members, as you know, because we are concerned about these reputation issues, and also to make sure that the people we admit as members share our values and our mission.
All right.
So I thank you for this moment.
Thank you very much. Okay, it looks like you are not asking questions to my panelists, but if you have a question for a fellow participant here in this hall, you can also ask that question. And please keep them short, precise, and concise. Yes, ma'am. Catherine, there's somebody behind you.
Thank you. My name is Edith Sally, the Executive Director of Women Leadership Development. Going back to that theme where you're saying opening new frontiers for partnerships and resources, I was just asking now the media groups, I believe you're representing them, how is the private sector coming in to put their social responsibility to the NGOs to do the work? If you look at the CBOs, they are saying they have these gaps. How is the media going to help to get to those people? Because at least you are everywhere than us. Our organization is national, but it's not dealing in some of the things. How are you going to bring up your social responsibility to go and support some work with the NGO work? I haven't seen it anywhere.
Yes, that question will be answered by somebody senior. Well, how we work is that they cannot speak for an organization like Nation Media, but at least there's somebody called Mr. Sam Barata who will come here when he's talking to us. He has noted that, and then he'll respond. If I have a personal opinion, I can't want to mix it with the Nation Media opinion. So he will speak.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kamara, I have the microphone right here.
I don't know who, you smuggled it?
I'm right here, and unfortunately I can't stand.
Okay, ma'am, please go right ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Laura Kanushu. I work for Legal Action for Persons with Disabilities. I have a few comments, and one is on the issues that most especially were raised by Mr. Bombo about smaller organizations. And I think I want to add my voice to the fact that as small organizations, we have an obligation to start first of all by building our capacities before we go into implementation. And I think the donors also should support us to build those capacities in terms of putting up structures, policies, and procedures in our organizations so that we can ably compete with the rest of I am a national organization, but I'm not a big organization, so that's why I say us. So I think the starting point is to build capacities for small organizations and then build trust and build them, grow with them, rather than start with the big donations that somebody was talking about of 100 million, when perhaps an organization just needs to write a policy or to develop, certain things for their organizations. So I think that's the start. Then my second comment is about the address to the national group. I'm very happy that you have organized this, and I believe that this is a starting point for us NGOs to work very closely. Now, one of the issues that I have with the media is that I am not sure that the issues that most NGOs work on are really a priority for the media. It's very easy for the media to report about walk to work. It will be hitting headlines, people power, but it's not a headline when a child with a disability is raped. It's not a headline when an orphan cannot go to school. And so I think that this interaction will also allow us to engage with you, the media, to be able to report on issues that we think are a big cause rather than the usual political reporting, which is a priority for almost every media house. But also, I have an issue with, as a person with disability, but also as a person who works with persons with disabilities, about the language that the media uses and about the stories that the media puts up when they choose to talk about issues of disability. For example, it's news when a deaf person marries another deaf person. And I don't see any news about that. But it's news in most cases. It's news when a disabled woman gets married. They will appear on the news, and it's not news to us as people with disabilities, because, people with disabilities can get married. So I just think that this relationship that we have started with the Nation Media Group will help us in the way the media brings out the issues that we advocate for, but also prioritize the issues that we advocate for.
Thank you very much, Laura Kanusu. Thank you. And like I said, Mr. Sam Barata will respond to some of those issues, but I also know now that the Chinese have a saying that a journey of 1,000 miles begin with a step, and I think NMG, you have taken your step. Yes, you have a microphone, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to sit because I'm not feeling that well. Number one, of course, we appreciate this session, NMG. Thank you so much. But I also want to say that the issues that have been spoken about today are not really new. We have spoken about these things in many forums, but maybe this time around, different audiences, but a little bit said differently. Because even under the women's movement, there is something called the Directors Forum. But there, we speak so much, we speak as victims. But when you meet private sector, then maybe we wake up to the call. Then thirdly, I want to say that I think we need to go beyond stating what is the problem, stating that, NGOs are corrupt, NGOs are not transparent, NGOs are like this and this. We also need to interrogate, why is it that these NGOs are ABCD? Possibly when we analyze the issue or the problem, we may want to come up with solutions that are sustainable. Then the last thing that I want to say, I come from an organization called Uganda Media Women's Association, but we also run a community radio station called Mama FM. It's developmental radio. And I want to say that most of the civil society organizations, when we're looking for funding and the like, it's about donors. But why? Where is government in this equation? Because for me, I think government of Uganda has got a responsibility to appreciate and also support these complementary efforts that the non-state actors are bringing on board. Because I know community radio stations outside Uganda are actually supported by government. So as we talk about these issues, government also has got to be put to account, so that we don't push all these things to the so-called donor, because I believe even the donors are also tired of us, and in their privacy, they can also be laughing at us. So I think we'll need to redeem our esteem as Ugandans and put government of Uganda to account. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you've been very candid. We can only take, in the interest of time, maybe 2 more. Good enough, you have not been asking questions, so you're making your contributions and not in form of questions. So I will not be, the panelists will not be responding. Most of the things you said were contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Kamara and NMG and other sponsors for this event. Really, it has been enriching. I'm called Dr. Tumukurate Spiridon, New Programs Development Associate at Japaigo. With regard to this subject of how can the NGO image be promoted more, I wanted to echo what Wolf Michael of GIZ Civil Society Head said. How can civil society liberate themselves from this trap of incentivization? How can they look beyond funding to define the content? And this, I think, is a fundamental question that would really put the need before the logistics. In other words, can our NGOs be able to develop a business case with clear outputs and point out those they have the capacity to achieve by themselves and those they would want to be helped by donors? Donors, by the way, starting locally, whether it is the corporate world, government, or externally through the broader global partnerships where we want to access technology and so on, in such a framework. I think that is the fundamental. We need to show that we are leading the way, and we have to learn from the Rotary groups. The church and groups have been able to do things and be supported. And then we need to ice this with high level of transparency. Let our outputs be the shopping case that we are credible destinations for support from beneficiaries, but also from other mechanisms within and outside. Maybe in concluding, I would like to the panelists and maybe Wolf himself, if we could guide how this can be done better. And I would like to end by saying, he said, NPD 3, they are looking at whether civil society can have a space. Maybe our directors can also start seeing how are you looking to take this opportunity to sell the civil society agenda for third actors into the national planning framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now can take only 2 more.
There's a gentleman there, his hand has been up like forever.
Okay, please give him a microphone.
Okay, forever. Mulumba Masuna, again from CEPAD. CEPAD, we are into innovative research. We do organizational development and capacity building. And we are supporting different small groups, like Mr. Dombo said, under different forums like the UNASO network. My experience is of about 15 years working with many of these organizations, especially from the grassroots. And I originate from Rakai. I remember when I was growing up, my mother used to have a civil society group called Munomokabi. That group used to do better work than many of us, because these people used to contribute what they had. They up to now are sustainable. She's old, but the group is there. And wherever there's a problem, they have a solution. I went into NGOs. I worked with World Vision, Red Cross. And in Rakai, we used to have a lot of Land Cruisers around. And just in one sub-county, I remember one of the organizations I was a manager, we used to spend about 700 million shillings per quarter. Sub-county, one sub-county, yes. But when you go to this sub-county, You cannot find the cows we gave, the goats we gave, the coffee seed. We used to buy almost everything, but they're not there. But my mother's group is there and doing some good work. I have a problem with the NGO concept in Uganda. The NGO concept in Uganda is about this big fund, this big donor, and the expenditure and the accountability, whatever it means. Could we go back to the local philanthropy? I think that term has been of recent introduced in Uganda. When you go to some of these countries where we travel, as the executive directors, you go to NGOs surviving locally. They're surviving on proceeds from telecom companies. They give them some social corporate support. They go to the communities. They no longer hire these African holes. We could have done this deep in a tree and not spend all this money here. They're doing things locally, but some of them are doing better work than those who are funded. I'm not saying that funding is not good, but how do we look at people like Katikiro of Uganda? I'm a prince of Uganda, but not promoting the Uganda kingdom. But you saw what was happening with Uganda. This man could go around and then you could hear 400 million from village. What is that? I think there's something we need to learn as heads of organizations. We can find resources locally. We need to know how to harness the processes, and we need to have that as the mechanism. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prince. And for those who have been following us on NTV Uganda, and those who are following us on 93.3 KFM, we are returning to normal transmission for NTV and for KFM. Thank you very much for having been part of this organization, this convention. I hope you have picked something. And please, you can continue the discussion, hashtag NGO convention on your Twitter handle, so that this information or this discussion does not end here, but you can continue engaging us. And for those who are here at the Auditorium at Africana, we will be continuing, and we'll be ending shortly with a rapporteur giving us a report and also the closing remarks. But before we get the closing remarks, and since I've already said Kwaheri for the people on NTV and 93.3 KFM, let me get one more contribution or question from the audience.
My name is Kasudia Mohammed, and I'm Executive Director, International Schools Partnership. I'm happy to be here, and it's the first time Uganda to have such a convention for NGOs. Thank you, national media and partners. My concern is, I have an idea. National media, there are many companies in Uganda, and they're supposed to give social responsibility each year. As donors are running out of supporting NGO work in Uganda, I would suggest, can we have these companies appreciate the work NGOs are doing in Uganda, so that at a time T, instead of worrying whether they're going to do their social responsibilities, they can team up with NGOs in Uganda, when a national media is the people of the game. I believe if companies can believe that NGOs are doing some work, I believe also their target of having market for their products can be easier, because every year they do social responsibility. So I don't think they're going to stop now, but donors will stop at a certain time T. So I suggest it is high time we have our companies come on board and we see things happening again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bombo, a man with a good name. Mr. Bombo, there's a whole road for you, there's a whole barracks named after you. So you're such a very popular man. Mr. Bombo, please, many people are commending you, commending your organization, the small ones that really have an impact. I did not say, no one said that you are not creating an impact. We only said there are a few cases where things were not going right. And we also have to mention those. Mr. Bombo.
Yes, thank you so much, our moderator. And I would like to thank everybody who has been here this afternoon. It has been a great pleasure for me to be here in front of you, to air out some of these issues and also to represent some of the organizations I lead down there. I hope with this kind of interaction, we are going to go a step ahead as civil society organizations. Thank you very much, the organizers, and thank you very much, my fellow panelists.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let us have highlights on way forward and convention outcomes. I call upon the convention rapporteur to step forward. And after that, we shall have Mr. Sam Barata.
Before the rapporteur comes, you know, there's something I've noticed. Please allow me to mention this. Earlier today, somebody talked about visibility of our organizations, and clearly Nation Media doesn't seem to be visible in people's minds. It is Nation Media, not national media. So we need to do something. I think Sam has a big job here to do to make NMG more visible in people's minds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the convention rapporteur, please, if you can step forward, and after that, Mr. Sam Barata from Nation Media to come and give us the closing remarks. And you have been such a wonderful audience, and I hope each of you is satisfied with the participation. In case you never got an opportunity to speak, we did not conspire to do that. We did not intend to do that. It was just a question of time. And we remember we also started it quite late. Sometimes we say we are in the East African Standard Time, but people have now turned into East Africa Stretchable Time. So they try to stretch it as much as they can. The convention rapporteur, if he's not ready, I'll have to invite Mr. Sam Barata to come and speak to us, the closing remarks.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to start by saying thank you all for having turned up here and shown and given us your time. And why we are saying thank you is for two main reasons. One is that you were all invited at very short notice, I think 3 weeks or slightly more than that, and we've been able to come here. And don't take that for granted. We want to say thank you very much, and we hope you found this very useful, and it is something you'd like to keep engaging with and asking us as many questions you can ask on how we proceed with this budding relationship. The other group I would like to thank is the panelists with us here, because they've been able to do a good job at very short notice, and give us some few salient points for us to discuss. And I could see the afternoon session picked up quite quickly. Normally the afternoons are very difficult to manage, but they managed to keep up and doing well. I'd like to thank you for that. Now, I want to answer the first two questions. There's some questions were asked to media. I want to answer those as best as I can, and then I'll go to what I think I should be addressing. The first one was CSR. How does the media come in to help the NGOs? I can't remember. It was a lady who asked. I was sitting in the back. I didn't see who. We actually do come in as National Media Group. The only issue maybe I can tell you where our CSR platforms are. Our CSR platforms are three: environment, health, and education. So those are the areas we play in. And normally, because you also have your funding and financial issues, is we plan with you, we plan ahead and make it part of our calendars. But we do activities there. October we did the Cancer Week, the Breast Cancer Week, with 1 or 2 NGOs and UMC and a few other hospitals. This month, November, we are doing the, I don't know if you know it, the male, the mustache, I know it's called, I forgot the word, basically for prostate cancer for men. So some of you, if you're not tested and you are 45 plus, please go to UMC hospital. I think you'll get free testing for prostate cancer. As far as Friday. After Friday, you'll have to pay for it because it ends on 30th November. So there's some things we're actually doing. We did some activity with some children's group. I think we gave mattress. I can't remember which one. Mattresses to some home that was looking after orphans that had run out of space. So there's some work we are doing. We are talking to some people somewhere who have also come to us on some issues, and definitely will be coming out. But let me say this: we need to also be able to get information on how we can partner with you. We can't do it in isolation. So we need to access information, and I think we have begun that process. that we can talk to. You can talk to us, and then we see how we can jointly address areas that need to be addressed and make an impact. The other one was NGOs, issues NGOs. We don't see issues that NGOs deal with as attractive to the media. Okay, I won't have. I'm going to answer this one. You all know that if I tell you that a dog beat a man, a dog beat a lady, it is not news. But if you say a man was found biting a dog, that is news. And unfortunately, that's how human nature is. We tend to be attracted by what we think is out of the ordinary. However, we are actually interested in some of your work. In fact, of all of it, our biggest problem, and I must admit, is we actually don't have access to information. Secondly, we never used to understand how NGOs work. We just recently began to understand how NGOs work also. That's the advantage. That's what I will tell you. So we don't understand, because most of what you do is you go, do your work, do your impact assessments, your evaluations, file your reports. They don't get found anywhere, and some of them are done in a very academic way. So you need somebody to be able to read, interpret them, and then rewrite them or do documentaries in a format that can be understood by the common person. So we actually need access to information. We need to work with you step by step on an ongoing basis. Tell us what we are doing, and then we come in and help you. And we're very interested, by the way, in anything that helps have an impact, a positive impact on communities. We are very interested in that kind of information, because it is, to us, by the way, it is content. For you, it is impact, showing you've done something. To me, it is content. So we are interested, and as I told you, our job is we are a content company. We are looking for as much information as possible in whatever forms there is. We'll tell it in our different platforms, or we'll store it for somebody to come and pick it. So we are definitely very interested, but we need to partner. That takes me to something I wanted to share, just to us to begin thinking a bit differently also, is that just looking from people attended here, most of us here are 30 years plus. There were a few who were below that. I don't know if you're aware that anybody who is 30 years plus, 78% of Uganda's population is younger than you. If you're 30 years and more, 78% of Uganda's population is younger than you. And if you take that number to 35 years, it goes to about, I think, 86%. I can't remember, I think it's 86%. Now that shows you that the majority of the people we are talking to, the majority of people we are trying to work and have an impact, are way younger than us, have come at a time when things have changed. You find that even in your own home, some of you who have got children who are above 5 years, because even 3 days they know, you're competing with them, just your attention, with your own mobile phone. They are more interested in your phone than in you. And this is the reality we've got to face. So even as NGOs, for us in the private sector, I can tell you this, that it's become a major disruptor. Major disruptor. It is forcing us to change our business models. Seriously. If you realize, if you had followed the live links, were being shown on Facebook and on Facebook, because there are some guys who are not interested in being in front of a TV, and there are many. There's some research has come out showing that 40% of people in the certain age group, I think the same age group, are not listening to radio most of the time. And guess where they are? They are on their phones. And we all don't know what they are listening to on those phones. So what is it they are listening to? And why am I bringing this up? I think it is something that NGO world, as you plan, as you strategize, you must begin to factor in whatever you're doing. There's a population coming below you, and then it has got 2 other major factors. So 3 things it's going to cause. It's going to cause a strain on education, on health, and on agricultural facilities and institutions and things like that. So because the number is big and it's coming, and it has got a major complication. It's not exactly interested in working. So there's other complication we've got to deal with also. So Going back to what we are here for, one is that just from what we said we are trying to achieve and what I've picked from the various comments and questions are things about issues about areas like, are we building winning partnerships, both within the NGO community, across sectors, media, government, the donors? Are we building winning partnerships? Are we willing to try changing, because it requires us to change, all of us. I've heard you say that donors are now asking for more and more things to qualify for funds. The same for us. For us, we don't go to donors. We go to consumers. Our biggest problem is you here. Private sector is you who are our problem. We have got to keep changing to keep you attracted to us in whatever form we are. First, media was disrupted by, we were the first to be disrupted by digital. But today, those of you who have got colleagues working in the banking, in the next 2-3 years, half of them will be home because things have also gone haywire there. It's much cheaper for me to bank your money on your phone than have a teller somewhere in brick and mortar. So, are we changing? Are we building relationships? And I'm just going to go through what I think was discussed and what I think we're going to go forward to. An issue of succession planning and sustainability organizations also came up. How do we plan for succession in in the different NGOs we work for? And how do we plan for sustainability of these organizations? How can we win them off the 5-year, the 3-year cycle of funds we have in the NGO world to make it more sustainable? How long can it last? So are we willing to learn from each other to know what we can do differently? To keep meeting to understand we can do differently? How can we begin raising funds to make ourselves more sustainable? How do such that we're able to go forward and develop something? Of course, succession planning is very key. How Mr. Williams talked about it and a few others. You leave and the connection goes after you. At times, nothing about doing with you, but is there a system that works behind you that is coming up and getting ready to take over and run it? The other issue is that I thought came up, I think, in Dr. Yvonne's presentation, which I think we should pick for all of us, is 3 key issues: listening, research, and relearning. We've got to listen to what our partners are telling us. What are they telling us? What are our funders telling us? What is the public behind there telling us? What are our services telling us? What's the response to our services coming back? So what should we do different? We should research. If we are being told funding is beginning to dry out, are we researching on how we can get different funding? Are we researching on how we can become more responsive to some of the activities we're undertaking? And of course, relearning. I was first taught this by my professor at the time. They told me that do not fall in love with your first idea. Never fall in love with it. Always learn to throw it away and begin anew. So are we willing to relearn how to do things differently? The Mildmay way. Can we relearn and begin afresh? Because we don't have a choice, isn't it? We must find a way to begin afresh and make organizations more sustainable and win them off the constant lookout for funds, for writing proposals, pitches, and all these kinds of things. And then at some point you begin to choose what you want to do.
The Timeline is brought to you by Everywhere You Go. Go TV! Live it, love it!
November 2018. A lovely Saturday morning, kicking off yet another ordinary weekend. For these party goers, it was a party on the waters of Lake Victoria. 100 partygoers on MV Templar. Little did they know that they were about to fight for their lives. According to reports, the overloaded MV Templar was repaired shortly before it set sail and was illegally operating on the waters of Lake Victoria. Uganda Police Marine Unit, supported by SFC, went out on a search and rescue mission. As the news circulated, social media was awash with heartfelt messages from those that had lost their loved ones and some of those that had survived this tragedy.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through. Then I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. See you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
I see you again.
We've come a long way,
yeah, we came a long way
from where we began.
You know we started.
Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
I'll tell you.
When I see you again.
First you both go out your way and the vibe is feeling strong, and what's small turn to a friendship turn to a bond, and that bond will never be broken, the love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach. So remember